Deep in the misty forests and rugged mountains of the Pacific Northwest, Bigfoot is no mere legend. It's a terrifying presence that haunts those who wander too close. These 5 dramatized true encounters, drawn from BFRO archives and inspired by the APRO bulletin reports before 1980, bring you face to face with the unknown. From a chilling barnside sighting in Rainier to unearthly screams in Fort Hall, these tales will grip your soul. Dim the lights, hit like and subscribe, and step into the shadows. Story 1. The Barnside Terror of Rainier, 1978. My name is Bill Leon Buell, and on a Sunday evening in 1978, I faced something behind my barn in Rainier, Washington, that I'll never forget. My small farm on Route 2 was surrounded by dense woods, the kind where the Pacific Northwest's secrets seemed to breathe. At dusk, as the sky turned a bruised purple, I heard rustling near the barn. Too heavy for a raccoon, too deliberate for a deer. Thinking a bear was after my chickens, I grabbed my shotgun and a flashlight, my breath fogging in the cool air. What I found wasn't a bear. I crept around the barn, the pines casting long shadows. The rustling stopped, replaced by a deep, guttural breathing that made my skin crawl. My flashlight beam caught it, a massive figure, standing upright, 8 feet tall, weighing maybe 400 to 600 pounds. Its dark, matted fur blended with the twilight, and its eyes glinted like wet stones, locking onto mine. It wasn't human, but it wasn't an animal either. Something else, something ancient. My heart hammered as I stood frozen, the shotgun heavy in my hands. It took a step, branches snapping under its weight, and I backed away, my voice gone. I ran to my neighbor Jim's house, and we returned together, hearts pounding. The creature was still there, moving through the brush, its footsteps loud and bipedal. I fired a warning shot into the air, hoping to scare it, but it kept coming, its breathing louder, closer. We bolted back to my house, slamming the door and calling the state police. They searched, but found no tracks that night, though I discovered a 15-inch footprint the next morning, human-like but impossibly large, near the barn. The police said I was shaken but alert, and I heard whispers of Bigfoot sightings in these mountains. Whatever it wasn't a bear. It was something that owned these woods, and it knew I'd seen it. I still hear those footsteps in my dreams, circling my barn. Story 2. The Screech That Shook Fort Hall, 1979. I'm Mary Thompson, and in the early hours of a cold 1979 morning, I hauled my trailer near Ferry Butte Road, 5 miles north of Fort Hall, Idaho. The sagebrush plains around my home were usually quiet, but at 2:30 a.m., a screech woke me. High-pitched, eerie, like a woman's cry mixed with a coyote's yelp, but no coyote could hit that pitch. Something was thrashing through the brush outside, heavy and fast. My horses in the pasture were frantic, stomping and whinnying, and a stench like unwashed armpits seeped through my windows, thick and foul. I grabbed my phone, hands trembling, and called Fort Hall police. 2 officers arrived, their flashlights cutting through the dark. They heard it too, the screech, intermittent and unearthly, echoing from the woods. One officer, his voice low, said it wasn't a coyote, it was too human, too wrong, like an animal caught in a trap. They found a patch of grass and sagebrush trampled flat, but no tracks, just that choking odor. Idaho State Police and a sheriff's deputy joined, reporting the same screams and smell. My trailer shook with a loud thump, like a massive creature running past, and I fled to a neighbor's, too terrified to stay. At dawn, the noises stopped, and the horses calmed, but I found no peace. The officers returned, noting the trampled area, but no footprints. They mentioned a similar report 2 weeks earlier, after strange tracks were found near Blackfoot Reservoir, rumored to be Bigfoot's. A Pocatello radio station mocked the incident, but I wasn't laughing. That scream wasn't natural, and whatever made it was watching me. I moved soon after, unable to sleep in that trailer, knowing something was out there, lurking in the Idaho night. Story 3. The Tracks of Skamania, 1974. I'm Kenneth Shepard, a field investigator for the Bigfoot Investigation and Research Organization, and in the summer of 1974, I was called to a remote creek bed near Skamania, Washington, after a local reported strange sounds. I'd been investigating Bigfoot for years, keeping a low profile to protect witnesses from ridicule. The Pacific Northwest was alive with sightings, and this call felt raw: moans, footsteps, and spooked livestock near a forested creek. I arrived with my father, John, and a local game warden, trudging through muddy river bottoms under towering pines. We found 2 large footprints, 15 inches long, pressed deep into the creek bank, human-like, but with a stride too long for any man. The mud was fresh, but the prints were a couple of weeks old, eroded and useless for casting. Still, a musky stench lingered, and the nearby dairy cows refused to graze. That night, I camped by the creek, my recorder ready. Around midnight, a low moan echoed, followed by heavy footsteps crunching through the brush. My flashlight caught nothing, but the stench grew stronger, and a sharp wood knock rang out, deliberate and close. I whispered into my recorder, "It's here," my heart racing. The footsteps circled my camp, slow and heavy, as if sizing me up. I stayed still, too scared to move, the air thick with that foul odor. At dawn, I found fresh tracks, no heel marks like the faked ones we'd seen in other cases, just deep, bare prints leading into the forest and stopping abruptly like the creature had vanished. A witness we later interviewed under hypnosis recalled a massive, hairy figure with glowing eyes, seen years earlier in these woods. The BFRO kept his name private, but I knew he'd seen something real, something that left tracks too heavy for this world, haunting Skamania's wilds. Story 4. The Bluff Creek Giant, 1967. I'm Roger Patterson, and in October 1967, I rode into Bluff Creek, Washington with my friend Bob Gimlin, chasing the legend of Bigfoot. I'd read about giant footprints in the Humboldt Times and was obsessed with finding proof. We were on horseback, my 16mm camera strapped to my saddle, following the creek through dense redwoods. The forest was silent, the air heavy with mist. When our horses spooked, rearing wildly, I grabbed my camera, heart pounding, and saw her, a massive creature, 7 feet tall, walking upright across the creek bed. Her fur was dark, matted, blending with the trees, and her arms swung with a loping gait. She turned, her eyes locking onto mine, deep and knowing, like she saw through me. I stumbled off my horse, filming as I ran closer, the camera shaking. Bob held his rifle, but we didn't shoot. She didn't charge, just kept walking, glancing back once before vanishing into the forest. The air reeked of musk, like something long buried. We found her tracks, 14.5 inches long, sunk deep into the sand, with a 41-inch stride no man could match. I cast them in plaster, my hands trembling. Soil tests later suggested she weighed over 2,000 pounds, impossible for any primate, yet the tracks were real, untouched by fakes. The 59 seconds of film I shot became my life's work, and my curse. Some called it a hoax, but I saw her move, felt her gaze. Those tracks, too deep for any man, hinted something beyond nature, maybe slipping through dimensions, as the BFRO bulletin speculated. I still see her eyes in my dreams, watching from the shadows of Bluff Creek, a giant that doesn't belong to our world. Story 5. The UFO Shadow of Kolchak Lake, 1979. I'm Don Worley, an investigator of unexplained phenomena. And in the summer of 1979, I was called to Kolchak Lake, Washington, after a hiker reported a bizarre encounter. The BFRO bulletin had published theories about Bigfoot and UFOs sharing strange, otherworldly traits, and this case felt like it fit. The hiker, a young man named Mike, had been camping near the lake, a remote spot 6 miles up the Icicle River Trail from Leavenworth. He'd heard stories of Bigfoot, but what he saw suggested something stranger. I met Mike at the trailhead, his face pale, his voice shaky. He said he'd been alone by his campfire, the moon casting shadows through the pines, when he heard screams, high-pitched, like a cougar, but faster, circling the lake. Around 2 a.m., he saw a figure, 8 feet tall, moving through the trees. It was hairy, broad, and upright, but as he watched, a faint, glowing light hovered above it, like a small, silent orb. The figure seemed to flicker, as if phasing in and out, before vanishing into the forest. The air smelled of ozone and rot, and Mike swore he heard a low hum, like a UFO. I hiked to the lake with Mike, finding deep, 16-inch footprints near his camp, leading to a spot where they stopped abruptly, as if the creature had dissolved. Nearby, the ground was scorched, like from a heat source, and a faint metallic tang lingered. No UFO tracks, but the prints were too heavy for a man, suggesting a weight beyond natural limits. Mike's story echoed APRO's theories. Bigfoot as a being slipping through dimensions, may be tied to those lights in the sky. I left the lake with a recorder full of his trembling voice and a chill I couldn't shake. Something was out there, not just of this earth, but beyond it, watching from Kolchak's shadows. Encounter 6, The Shadow of the North Cascades, 1969. My name is Jack Turner, and in the summer of 1969, I was backpacking in the North Cascades near Glacier Peak, Washington, with my friend Sam. We were seasoned hikers, drawn to the rugged wilderness along the Pacific Crest Trail, where jagged peaks and dense fir forests stretched endlessly. We'd heard the Sasquatch stories, loggers talking about strange howls, native tales of a hairy giant, but we were skeptics, more interested in the views than folklore. That night, in a clearing by a small creek, something changed my mind forever. We'd set up camp as the sun dipped below the mountains, the air cool and thick with pine. Our campfire crackled, casting shadows on the trees, and we were eating beans when the forest went silent. No crickets, no owls, just an oppressive quiet. Around 10 p.m., a low guttural moan echoed from the ridge above, followed by a sharp wood knock, like a club striking a trunk. Sam laughed nervously, saying it was a bear, but my skin prickled. Then came a stench, foul and musky, like wet fur left to rot. I grabbed my flashlight, scanning the trees, when I saw it. A massive figure, maybe 8 feet tall, standing just beyond the firelight. Its fur was dark, blending with the shadows, and its eyes glowed faintly, reflecting the flames. It stood upright, arms long and heavy, watching us. I whispered to Sam, "That's no bear." He froze, his spoon clattering to the ground. The thing took a step, snapping a branch, and let out a deep growl that vibrated in my chest. We scrambled into the tent, zipping it shut, hearts pounding as footsteps circled our camp, slow and deliberate. The stench grew stronger, and a shadow passed over the tent, massive and looming. We didn't sleep, clutching our knives until dawn. At first light, we found footprints, 15 inches long, with clear toes, pressed deep into the soft earth, leading toward the creek and stopping abruptly, as if the creature had vanished. We packed up and hiked out, not speaking until we reached the trailhead. A ranger dismissed it as a bear, but I knew better. Those tracks, that smell, those eyes, they belonged to something ancient, something that owned the Cascades. I've never gone back, but I still hear that growl in the quiet of the night. Encounter 7. The Tracks of Mount St. Helens, 1965. I'm Ellen Carter, and in August 1965, I was camping near Spirit Lake, just north of Mount St. Helens, Washington, with my husband Frank and our 2 kids. The lake was a summer haven, surrounded by dense forest and volcanic slopes, but locals whispered about strange sightings, big footprints, eerie howls. We set up our tent by the water, the kids splashing in the shallows, while Frank and I enjoyed the peace. That peace didn't last. On our second night, as the moon lit the lake, I woke to a strange sound, rocks clattering like something heavy was moving along the shore. I nudged Frank, whispering, "Did you hear that?" He nodded, grabbing his flashlight. We stepped outside, the air cold and still, and heard a low rumbling grunt from the trees. The kids were asleep, thank God, but our dog Rusty whimpered, pressing against the tent. A foul smell hit us, like rotting meat and wet fur, and Frank's flashlight caught a glimpse of something, tall, hairy, moving upright through the pines, maybe 50 yards away. It stopped, turning toward us, its eyes glinting like coins in the beam. It was massive, over 7 feet, its shoulders broad and unnatural. Frank shouted, hoping to scare it, but it didn't flinch, just let out a deep, bone-rattling growl. We backed into the tent, hearts racing, as heavy footsteps crunched closer, then stopped. The smell lingered, and Rusty whined all night. At dawn, we found tracks, 14 inches long, sunk deep into the mud, with a stride no human could match. They circled our camp and vanished into the forest. We left that day, reporting it to a ranger who shrugged, saying it was probably a bear. But bears don't walk like that, and they don't leave tracks that heavy. Something was watching us by Spirit Lake, and it didn't want us there. Encounter 8. The Eyes in the Gifford Pinchot, 1962. My name is Tom Hayes, and in October 1962, I was hunting deer in the Gifford Pinchot National Forest, Washington, near the Cispus River. The forest was thick with cedar and fir, the air crisp with fall, and I was alone, tracking a buck through a ravine. I'd heard the Bigfoot tales, loggers claiming they'd seen a giant, tracks found near logging camps, but I figured they were just stories. That afternoon, deep in the woods, I learned they weren't. I was crouched by a stream, checking for tracks, when the birds went quiet. A chill ran through me, like the forest was holding its breath. Then I heard it, a sharp, high-pitched whistle, not a bird, but deliberate, like a signal. I stood, my rifle ready, and scanned the trees. Across the stream, maybe 100 feet away, I saw a figure, tall, at least 8 feet, covered in reddish-brown fur, standing upright. Its face was shadowed, but its eyes burned red, glowing in the fading light. A stench hit me, like damp fur and decay, and my stomach twisted. I raised my rifle, not to shoot but to feel safer, but the thing didn't move, just stared, its gaze heavy and unyielding. Then it let out a scream, shrill, almost human, echoing through the ravine. My knees buckled and I backed away, tripping over roots. It took a step, then another, its strides long and fluid, before vanishing into the trees. I ran, heart pounding, not stopping until I reached my truck. The next day, I went back with a friend, finding 16-inch footprints in the mud, too deep for any man, leading nowhere. A local hunter said he'd heard that scream before, always near the river. I still hunt, but not in that ravine. Those eyes are still out there, watching, waiting in the Gifford Pinchot. That's it for these 5 spine-chilling Bigfoot encounters from the Pacific Northwest. From Rainier's terrifying barnside visitor to the otherworldly shadow at Kolchak Lake, these tales hint at mysteries beyond our understanding. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe to support more dramatized true encounters from the unknown. Stay safe and keep an eye on the woods.